We're living our truth now. Krista, what?
Krista who?
Christadelphian?
Did you say Christian Dolphin? So are you from Philadelphia?
Welcome to the Life After Leaving podcast, an ex-Christadelphian podcast.
Hello, heathens, and welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Zinnia. Today's guest is Luke. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So today we're going to hear your story of becoming an ex-Christadelphian. So as usual, we're going to start first with your experience as a Christadelphian. And I also always like to ask, to get us started, how long has it been since you left?
So I believe it would have been the start of 2022 or maybe the end of 2021. So compared to most of the people you talk to, not very long.
Yeah, I think you're definitely the most recent to have left, which is kind of an interesting angle. So it'll be good to hear your perspective. It's probably going to be more relevant for some of the people who are maybe thinking about leaving or currently leaving. But let's get started. So where in the world are you?
I am based in Australia.
Wonderful. And were you born in the group?
Yeah, I was born into it, and I've got a pretty extensive family history in it too.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely makes it a little trickier with leaving. And I kind of came from the same background with that. And what kind of ecclesia were you in? Was it more of a liberal or conservative one? Because now that I'm learning all about these Australian ecclesias, I feel like I got to ask.
Yeah, so the initial meeting that I was in, it was basically just our family, and it was pretty interesting because religiously and how they were involved with being Christadelphians was very, very conservative, but socially they were quite liberal, which is pretty weird. Normally it's like one way or the other. Like people who in their day-to-day lives are fairly liberal tend to be part of liberal ecclesias. But there was eventually some drama at our little family church, and we ended up moving. And it's pretty funny. The church that we ended up moving to, by all the liberal ecclesias, it's called conservative, and by all the conservative ecclesias, it's called liberal. So
you just can't fit in.
From my perspective, it's pretty in the middle. But for the area in Sydney that we were in, it's probably slightly more to the liberal side, but like women's input was valued, but speaking and stuff like that definitely wasn't allowed. But like you didn't have to be in full suit and tie and all that kind of thing. It was
not the blue suits.
Yeah. Oh, they were blue suits. Don't worry about that. But it was definitely a lot more relaxed environment than the one I grew up in, and it was quite a nice meeting. I don't have a lot of bad to say about the meeting that I was last in.
Okay. Were they generally pretty small when you say family ecclesia, like less than 30 people? Or...
Well, we have a very big family. So on my dad's side, he's the second child of 8.
Oh, wow.
So it was a small ecclesia for a Christadelphian meeting, but it was just our family. So it was it was a very, very strange experience, to be honest.
Don't worry, we like strange here.
Yeah, so when we ended up moving in 2013 to our bigger meeting, I was like, it was very shocking. I didn't actually know that there were other Christadelphians.
What?
Yeah.
So I guess you didn't go to CYC, huh?
No. So a big part of like what was taught to us is that like our family, I guess, had the true spiritual belief. So it seemed like it was just our family, and then like occasionally we get these visitors, and it wouldn't really make a lot of sense to younger Luke. But so when we ended up transferring meetings in 2013, when I saw all these other Christadelphians, I was like, huh? And it kind of exploded my young brain.
Wow, it sounds like you were very sheltered in that environment, like not a lot of outside exposure within the Christadelphian culture, whereas a lot of people, like I traveled a lot to other ecclesias, so that's kind of the opposite of that more typical experience from what I've heard from others.
Yeah, like the Christadelphian community is already quite insular, so to be in our own tiny little bubble within that was, I mean, at the time you obviously don't know, you can't compare it to anything else, but yeah, when we left our family meeting and were able to interact with other ones, it was kind of crazy seeing just how many there were over Australia, and how many, even in Sydney, how many different meetings there were. And yeah, it was pretty shocking.
Yeah, just in my head, I'm thinking that doesn't seem like a great long-term plan, as eventually I would hope that they would have plans for you to like grow up and marry and date and, things like that. And how's that going to work when you're not supposed to date outside your bubble, but you're in this small group of just your family? So that's a very strange situation that they didn't encourage a little more mingling, because usually that kind of happens at least as you hit adolescence. There's kind of a little more of a push to socialize with other people your age.
Yeah, like, so we would have like our own like Bible schools and stuff, and people would come, but it's not like not like your typical Bible schools or conferences where there's like lots and lots of people and you can meet people your age and stuff. It was kind of like select families that I guess were approved by our family that would meet with
Wow.
us. And yeah, it's really strange. Yeah, a lot of people in Australia would have heard of that ecclesia, and
Mm-hmm.
but not actually have heard the full history of it. It's pretty crazy. Could almost do an episode on that, but
Well,
yeah,
maybe someday we will. But for now, I
I'm
want
not
to hear more about you for sure and what
I'm
your
not really
experience was.
not really sure what the end kind of plan was, because there was a lot of us grandkids, and I guess maybe it was inevitable that eventually they'd have to branch out.
Yeah, because I don't know how many people also would voluntarily go into that environment from the outside world too. So I think that's a tough sell for some people. But
Yeah,
maybe we loop back a little bit deeper into your childhood. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about what it was like being, a kid, or, what you remember about Sunday school or going to meeting, or how it felt being in public schools compared to that.
yes, obviously a big part of our original meeting was like this sense of family. Like we would have lots and lots of extra classes and stuff, and we kind of just always be surrounded by our family. So it was very interesting, this feeling to be surrounded just by a family and not really any other peers our age, or I guess any other people in the community, and then be going to a public school. Because of that, there was always kind of this feeling that we didn't really fit in with people in our school. So like I said, we did have Bible schools and we went on family vacations together, all up and down the east coast of Australia. It was strange, I guess, is a good word to put to it, because yeah, we didn't really have anyone to interact with, and it was just really kind of this bubble that was just our family.
So were you really feeling isolated a lot in your childhood? Like, were you able to make friends at school and connections? Or it sounds like it was the overwhelming feeling was just kind of being in the bubble.
So I did make friends pretty easily at school, and like when we were at school, people were pretty accepting and stuff. I went to just local schools, and like it was very, very multicultural area, and so people didn't really kind of care too much what people's religious or cultural backgrounds were. People kind of just got along with each other. But yeah, so in our family, there wasn't a lot of even kids my age as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are people relatively close, but I think it was like 2 or 3 years split between me and other people. So I didn't really have contemporaries in our
Yeah,
meeting. Um,
that's a big gap when you're a kid.
yeah, yeah. And when it's just your family too, it's like you kind of know everything about everybody, and you kind of want new faces and new people, but you can't, with family, you're kind of stuck. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was tricky, but we had lots of different activities and holidays and stuff to keep us busy, and you do all your projects and stuff and get involved in plays and things. So there was stuff to keep me busy as a kid, but there was this beginning of this feeling of not quite fitting in.
In both places, or?
So when it's just our family, I didn't really have anything to compare it to. So initially it was just at school, but then when we
Okay.
moved meetings, it was this weird kind of place where I felt like I wasn't quite religious enough, because there's a big thing in Australia where most Christadelphians tend to go to the religious school, Heritage,
Mm-hmm.
or be homeschooled. And so going to a public school was very, very uncommon. In our new meeting, I think basically everybody went to Heritage College. So
Hmm.
it's not that we were shunned, but obviously there was a big difference. So at school I was too religious for most kids, seemingly my background, and then at church I was like too worldly or secular. Worldly, that's the word they love to
Yeah,
use.
I don't know. It's an interesting experience, and I haven't heard much about the heritage school yet, so maybe someone will come on and talk more about that, since that's something I haven't heard much about and we don't really have over here in the United States that I'm aware of.
Yeah, it's a deep rabbit hole, and I didn't really have a lot of experience with it. The new meeting we were at, they sometimes had functions there, but we just were able to use the facilities. And I
Mm.
actually had a job there not too long ago, and it was very, very strange to see up close. But
That sounds like a weird twist. I wasn't expecting that one. Oh yeah, I started
yeah,
working for, Christadelphians. Like, wait, what?
yeah, this was when I was in the last stages of still being involved, and
Oh, really ratcheted it up a notch.
um, it's kind of funny. Like a big prerequisite of working there is being part of the church.
Naturally.
Obviously, you need to have some kind of qualification, but that was like a big thing. It's like they just kind of vouched for me straight away, just based on that. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. So that's some. I guess as you talk to more Australians, you'll get a bigger insight into it. And so I only have the outside perspective. I don't actually have the experience of what it was like going to school there. I just got to witness people at school and the teachers, and yeah, I could talk a lot about it.
All right. So, when you were attending, did you ever decide to get baptized?
Yeah, so when we moved to the broader Christadelphian community, I was 15, and when I was an adolescent, it the whole kind of idea of church and God and everything, it didn't make a lot of sense to me, but I didn't really have a choice about going to the meeting or
No,
not.
no.
But like my next steps were, I wasn't really sure of what to do. Like it seems like there's kind of a plan for kids wanting to get baptized and stuff. And even when I was at the new church, it wasn't really something that interests me. And some stuff happened with my family. And when I was a bit older, I guess as a last kind of attempt to sort of mend things with family and sort of, I guess, prove to myself that this stuff is real, I did kind of decide to go through the process of getting baptized. And I got baptized when I was 19. Um, and most people, I guess, can relate to after that feeling. Everything kind of got flipped on its head when you're like, oh, I'm like all these other more experienced people in the church, and then those experienced people let you down, and it's very confusing when you're young and you expect more of people, and that these standards that people set themselves to, they don't actually live up to. It's very confusing, especially after you've made such a big commitment.
So, it sounds like you had some major things potentially happen after your baptism that changed your view of the people there in general.
Yeah, so that was kind of a gripe I had before I got baptized. That people, it's these people claim to know better and set themselves on a higher standard, or like they have this truth that they claim, and yet it seems like they're not living to a high standard in their life. And so then after I was baptized, that was even more profound when just the hypocrisy became a lot more apparent after I was baptized, and when you're unbaptized, like it's not like there was this big division in the meeting, but it's like the standards people were held to were a lot less. And then, when I was elevated to
Brother
baptized,
status. Yeah.
yeah, it's strange that people were dishonest or flaky, and you're kind of thinking it doesn't make sense. Yeah, it was kind of looking behind the curtain a little bit, and yeah, it was yeah, very difficult to come to terms with.
You had mentioned that you might want to talk about abuse within the ecclesia. Did you want to talk at all about that culture or any of the problems that were going on?
Yeah, so that's I guess it's a bit of a tricky one. Maybe on a light-hearted note, like Australian Christadelphians, at least in my generation, they did love the old spare the rod, spoil the child kind of thing, and
Mm.
that was kind of it was It's funny and outrageous now thinking about it, how that was something that we all kind of compared what different punishments we'd get as kids.
Oh.
And, thinking back to when I was a kid, I was definitely naughty, and there might have been some times that a smack was justified, but when it goes past that, that's obviously pretty serious. And in Australia, they're actually I'm not sure where the legislation is at the moment, but there are some rules about smacking. Like it's basically making it so that it can't go into abuse. It's there's very, very strict. I think it's like it has to be like close-handed and like not leave a mark and that kind of thing. And I very much hope that the Christadelphians are following all the rules, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's not the case.
Yeah, if they don't know how to report it or who to report it to, hard to get people to, follow the rules, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Just keep people uneducated about them, I think, sometimes.
But yeah, when we eventually moved out of the meeting, it was just I can't really put into words how crazy it was going from being in this, tiny little bubble where like it's just your family and there's no one else that to there being hundreds and thousands of other people that believe similar things to you, and there being other young people that you can hang out with and stuff. And it didn't really turn into anger or anything, but it was just confusion. And I've since had some people that I've talked, when I talk about that stuff, said there's no way that you could have believed that. But that was kind of just when you're young, you don't really question things. So
And they're told it to you as fact.
Yeah. So
every week.
it's not like like when you're 10, 11, 12 years old. You're not going to go and do a deep dive to check if things like that are true, compared to when you're a teenager. You might have the wherewithal to go and find it, but
yeah, you don't have the skills and resources and all of that for that kind of thing to figure out what you believe for yourself at those ages.
Yeah, exactly.
And then what age were you when you guys switched meetings and you kind of got to broaden your worldview? I forget if you mentioned that.
That was the year that I turned 16.
Okay, so you were like a teenager when you were able to open your worldview. Okay, so it was pretty much all of your like early formative years then were in this very insular, like micro community of Christadelphians compared to most of us that are in the broader group of Christadelphians.
Yeah. So it was this really kind of crazy scenario where we'd have like 3 or 4 classes a week, sometimes even 5, or like special efforts and stuff. But it's just our family and then the occasional approved outside family. So in the wider Christadelphian community, there's obviously a lot more variety, and you can go and visit different communities, or you meet up with all these people from all over. I guess Australia's a pretty big country, so from all over Australia, but people from outside Australia too, at conferences and Bible schools and stuff, and at CYCs. But yeah, that was never really a reality for us. So yeah, it was a very, very hard culture shift for about a year or so.
Yeah, I can imagine that's just pure culture shock. Even though it's the same Christadelphians, technically, it's really not.
Yeah. It was difficult, and then going to CYCs and stuff, and then bigger Bible camps and things, I would always be like quiet kid in the corner and hanging out with only people I knew. And one family within our family, like I said, my dad
had 7 siblings, right?
Yeah. So his older brother, they actually did leave our meeting a few years before everybody else left. So my cousin, the only cousin I had that was my age, ended up leaving our meeting.
Oh no, they left.
Yeah, it was really sad.
That is hard. Yeah, you're like only friend.
Yeah, I got on with all my cousins, but that was, you have that cousin that's like your best friend, and so for him to leave, that was really hard. But because he left a little bit before us, he had all these extended friends, and so I kind of just hang out with him at CYC and at these camps and stuff, and make friends through him. If he didn't go to stuff, I probably wouldn't go to it either. But
yeah. But it's good that you had that a little bit of a hand holding as you navigated the culture shock and tried to figure out your place in this new larger group.
I remember when we reconnected with those set of cousins. That was a very, very strange day, but it was happier to reconnect with him, and it was a lot easier being in this crazy new world with someone that you're familiar and close with.
In the older ecclesia, I was just wondering, does that follow the standard ecclesial format that I'm aware of like having a couple arranging brothers in charge of the meeting that are elected in and they kind of run the show? Or did they make up their own hierarchy and stuff there?
See, here's the crazy thing. I'm not actually sure, because in terms of like people that could arrange that kind of stuff, there literally would have been 9 or 10, maybe a few more, as some of my older cousins got baptized, like baptized men. So I think it could have been the case. It was either one of two options. Either like everyone kind of sorted things out together, or the super patriarch of the church, my dad's dad, kind of just controlled everything. And I think that's probably more likely what the case was, which...
Even if it was unofficial, potentially. But yeah.
Yeah, I have an inclination to think that's more like that, but it would be a funny situation where the arranging brothers literally are just 7 brothers.
Like, that sounds like that old movie, like 7 Wives for 7 Brothers or something. But way less fun. I don't think there's much dancing.
But I can only imagine what kind of fights and stuff would happen between these 7 brothers. It's almost
all
like
power hungry, trying to like navigate story. That. Like one of them usually would like stone the other and throw their body in the ditch in like the Bible.
Yeah. I wouldn't put it past them.
Sell them into Egypt.
So just a couple of things on that, actually. Now that I think about it, at our new meeting, my dad, he kind of always had some kind of role. Like, I'm pretty sure we joined, and then he straight away became the, I think, Sunday school superintendent.
Okay, superintendent.
And so occasionally I would get to sit in on like arranging meetings and just general meetings and stuff like that. Later on, because we had our own ecclesial young people's group, eventually I'd have to report in as part of our young people's committee as well. And so seeing how that was all undertaken, that's something that never really happened at
the old meeting.
Yeah. Apparently when the meeting was first formed, there were a few other families in the meeting, but I have no memory of them. They must have left the first five or so years of my life. But
that's not a good sign.
I have no memory of any kind of meeting or my dad having to stay and do anything like that. I guess that's one benefit of when it's a family thing. You can kind of all communicate it like that.
You almost don't need to have meetings. You also all get together for the holidays and take care of business then. You're always together.
Exactly. Or just have a little chat after Sunday, I guess. But your little joke about people trying to off one another actually does bring up a funny true story. So if it was bad enough that our family was part of this little insulated group, they also had a family business. So it's like we were just surrounded by each other all the time.
Wait, they had like a workplace where they all work together?
Yeah, it was something that they were all involved in. So, like I said, my dad's older brother, he left the workplace and then sort of also left our meeting too.
What kind of industry was it? I'm just curious. If you can speak broadly about it, I'm just curious.
So my grandpa did all kinds of stuff, but this was in like electronics manufacturing.
Okay, all right. I wasn't sure if it was going to be like teaching or like preaching kind of thing, because I've heard of that from someone who has left like the Exclusive Brethren. He was involved in like a publishing for the religion. It was really weird. So I was curious if it was related to the religion.
A lot of older people I talk to in Sydney, they apparently do talk about my paternal grandpa as this great preacher and great teacher until he kind of became quite reclusive. But no, he didn't mix business and his religious life. I guess thankfully that would have made things even
That's
messier.
what I was
But
thinking. That would be very complicated.
what actually led to us and the majority of my uncles and aunts and cousins leaving was there was a bit of a religious dispute at work, and it led to an argument which led to us all leaving. And then is really funny. It's something that me and my cousin that I'm closest with joke about like how so they left and then we left and then we rejoined with the people who left, and then so it was our small original church was now just like 3 families basically.
Yeah, just getting smaller by the day, it sounds like.
So so it's one thing to just it being a circuit of your uncles doing an exhortation on a Sunday, but then when it's like 3 people that technically are allowed to do it, it's like you're just getting all the hits. You can kind of make a bingo card, I guess, of what they're going to say. But then eventually, as my grandpa's health deteriorated, that ecclesia broke down as well, and then they joined a meeting that most of my family were at, but were on bad terms, then kind of became friends again. And
sounds like a political drama. Like this could be like a little Netflix special.
Yeah, unfortunately, it kind of has like fairly boring ending. It's like,
Netflix would fix that part.
We can't. Yeah, we need.
That's when the body in the pit would be discovered.
Yeah, we need some creative director to put. I mean, I guess there's me leaving. There's that. You could.
Well, that's a good scandal.
You could write it from their perspective, and then just I don't know, add some crazy lies about things that I did to.
Oh yeah, you were on drugs, right, and all this stuff.
I mean, we don't have to get into. No.
All right. Any other stories you want to share before we start setting the stage for when you started leaving?
So, like, I listened to a few of your other podcasts and the ones with other people from Australia, and then them talking about Melbourne and stuff and how it's different to Sydney, and it's kind of crazy. So I was lucky enough to, I guess, visit other areas where there were Christadelphians, and it's kind of just funny seeing all the like cultural differences, which I guess are influenced by, I guess, where the country that people practice in as well. So my mum is from New Zealand, and we went over there for a conference once, and it just seems like, just on a whole, that they're all like generally more conservative on average than Australian Christadelphians.
I mean, the Australians I've met have been pretty chill, just as people so far. A lot of them.
It seems like there's a big split. Like someone made the point that you'll find the most liberal and most conservative ecclesias in Australia, and that's definitely true. And bit funny considering the point I made about seemingly going to somewhere that was in the middle. And so I kind of have no experience with any of those super liberal churches, and I think there's actually a split which you might not be privy to about Logos and Shield.
I've only heard of it. I really don't know anything about it because we were lost in our amended, unamended, and whatever else over in the US that I guess was different than yours there, all the different splits.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's all over Australia, but certainly in Sydney there kind of was basically a more liberal and more conservative side, and they had two kind of factions. Logos is giving me that they are definitely the more conservative side, and it kind of was a case where they kind of didn't mix a lot to, I guess, avoid fights, and they would meet up at super combined events. We did see a lot of people from those meetings at CYC and stuff, but they're not typically other meetings that we'd mix with. But the reason I bring up, I guess, about culture and stuff, which was really funny, is talking to American and Canadian Christadelphians. Like, they go hard for like Halloween and Christmas, which Christmas was a pretty big no-no in Australia.
Okay.
Like our family always did it, and our Christmas bashes were quite fun. And obviously, that's not something that they associated with any kind of religious connotation.
Yeah, more like a cultural thing, I guess.
Yeah, and you get presents and eat a lot, which is pretty
It's
fun.
a good holiday. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
Good
it
time.
is a good holiday. But that was like something that if we ever talked about, I guess in our family with, I'd have to say like 80 or 85% of other Christadelphians, they would like scowl at you and like be like, okay, well, what's the religious significance? And we're like, well, there's nothing. We just have a
There's
big family
nothing. It's
and get
fun.
together.
They're just fun holidays. It's food and family,
Maybe because it's
costumes, junk
winter and
food.
like snowy in some areas in North America. Maybe that's why.
We need stuff to do. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So
It is funny, the different hemispheres. Maybe we can do some Facebook polls and see what people have to say, if that's a real theory.
yeah.
What would be the big winter holidays for you then? Because
Oh,
we're in the opposite seasons. What would be like your version of Christmas then, for like what's our summertime that we don't go hard for? Is there an
I don't
opposite? Yeah.
really know. The middle of the year is kind of dreary for Australians.
That's when we just start letting off fireworks. So it gets
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, all our stuff is kind of summer based. Like our not Independence Day, but is in the start of the year,
Mhm.
and then most like around Easter time, like there's a lot of shows in different capital cities, but that's not winter either. We're gonna have to find something fun to do
Yeah,
to
you
break
guys
up
need a
the
new holiday is what it sounds like.
yeah, because
So just pick one. You
we don't
need
have
a cozy one.
we don't have
Yeah.
Thanksgiving either, and
Wait, you don't have any Thanksgiving? Because Canadians have their own and then Americans have their own.
no,
There's
yeah,
no like,
we don't
just
have
make an
Thanksgiving.
Australian version. Just make
Yeah, we
it,
need to.
and that can be your cozy winter holiday. You can just have
Yeah, there we
Australian
go.
Thanksgiving.
We can pick where to put it. And
Yeah, you can
we don't do Halloween either. Like I've
at
never
all,
had.
like not at all.
Well, I think in some communities they like arrange to do it, and some people put up
Okay.
decorations and stuff. But I
That's
think
so
maybe
funny.
in our whole life, and it was when we were living at our old house, we've only had like one person knock on our door for candy. Like we don't even call it candy here. You're so silly saying it. For lollies.
I have heard people call it lollies. One of my cousins married an Australian. And I also liked picking up he kept, instead of saying mosquitoes, he'd just say mozzies.
Mozzies. Yeah,
I
that's a good
liked that one. Yeah. Everything was just abbreviated, I feel like.
Yeah. Yep. That's exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the history of Halloween before and how it like evolved. And so there's like some European roots. And then I think it was generally like, a lot of morphing in America into what it was. And like people throwing vegetables through your window if you didn't give them candy. So it's very much a chaotic American tradition. And they were like carving turnips before jack-o'-lanterns. So it's a very, very, very random holiday. So I'm not surprised it's in a weird American thing, but I really enjoy it. It's a very carefree, chaotic holiday. So you don't have to be with family and whatever. And it's not as stiff as some of the other holidays. All right. All right. Let's talk about you leaving.
Yeah. So unfortunately, quite a few years later would have been when I because before I was baptized, it was something that I considered moving out and leaving this community as well, or at least I guess broadening my horizon to see what else was there.
As like an adolescent? Like, or when you
Yeah,
were like a
because
teen or?
I didn't really it didn't really feel real to me at all as a teenager. Like a lot of people get baptized before they're 18, so amongst people my age, 19 was a pretty normal age, but for most people that's a little bit late. But yeah, it got to this stage where, like I said, the illusion was broken where you realize that if these people have the true truth, that they're going to be living in a certain way. And so when that breaks down, it kind of rocks what you believe. And it seemed like I was kind of just going through the motions. And so it was kind of quite a gradual process where
Well, it seems like you went from that doubt to then joining and then kind of taking like a wiggly way out.
it was a big spike because a big motivation behind me getting baptized was to kind of help out with the family situation, and it didn't really improve things, and so I was kind of just stuck now with this commitment I'd made. But it sounds so silly now talking about it, but it was a big drama at the time that our meeting was trying to, I guess, freshen up the hymn selection and include
Oh,
some more
drama.
modern ones, which it's so silly because Yeah, it is a more modern sound, but they did this huge creation of making sure that all the stuff in there being sung was stuff that they believed.
Oh yeah, like every line. Yeah, they go through like every
Yeah,
word.
because I don't know what the hymn book situation was like at your meeting, but the one that we had at ours, the little green one,
Yeah, we
had
we went from the black one to the green one.
yeah, but there's so like 500 or so in there, and just a wide array of different topics and stuff, and some things that didn't line up. But so we obviously in 2020 had COVID, and so that kind of pushed forward the modernization of our ecclesia and how we did things.
Mm.
Like we always had Zoom, and a lot of people incorporated technology and stuff. But because we were playing pre-recorded hymns, there is quite a few versions of the old stuff, but there's a lot more newer stuff that's recorded.
Easier to
So
get for that kind of thing for pre-recorded.
yeah, so there was this decision made at our meeting that they were going to be trialing and using some new hymns and things. A lot of it that had already been sung at different events, I guess, at the meeting. But there was a small section of our meeting that kind of saw it as like, I guess, like modernizing or wanting to be more like modern day churches and things, and didn't really like it. And it led to quite a few numbers from our new meeting leaving, including
Oh my
everyone
god.
in my family except for me.
They all left because they insisted on traditional music, even though there were still hymns and they were still from the hymn book.
Well, they were from a hymn book, but
Because I'm only aware of like 3 hymn books. It was like the black one, the green one, and then there was like the more youth camp one that would come out when like the CYC was together.
they were more upbeat. Like
Yeah,
they were
lively.
poppy was the word that my dad used, which he didn't like the pop feel of them, which
Okay.
is
Yeah.
quite insignificant in my opinion. But, at the meeting we were at, most of our family were at, as you'd say, a more conservative ecclesia that was closer to our house. But where we were at, there were a lot more people that were my age and then my next brother
Yeah.
Down's age. So they decided to leave, but I stayed there, and I think that there was this small sense of like he's doing something wrong kind of thing.
Because he's not following along with the rest of us, staying in line. Even though it sounds like for a lot of people, social stuff has been a really strong factor where like they miss friends and things like that. And the family dynamics, were what brought them in and kept them in for a while. So it is tricky that at that point now you're at that age where it's more about friends. And then they want you to choose the family, it sounds like, over that just to show that conviction that you're like sticking with their ideals.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. It kind of seems like the attitude of that we have this true truth has kind of, while now they can't really outward profess it, it might still be something that my family believed. And yeah, I have to say at the church we were at, the community there was really good, and there were lots and lots of good people that helped me a lot. And
Good.
yeah, and I remember at that time when everyone left, there was a lot of people that gave me a lot of support, and it was
Oh,
yeah,
good.
it was the start of, like, I guess, this tension between me and my family. So at the time, I was dating someone that wasn't religious too, so obviously that's a big no-no, and especially in our
Mm-hmm.
family. Different parts of my family had differing levels of, I guess, dealing or confronting that, and she was quite okay with me being religious. I did try and sort of incorporate her with that, but I never really pushed
We
her or
we
forced.
try.
Yeah, I understand it's a very hard thing to come into. So it was never something that I was like, you have to do this if we're going to be together. But it was something I encouraged, and then eventually she's like, this is just so weird. I can't really attend these things. I was like, yeah, okay, that's fair enough. But me being with her, I guess, was like the big thing that kind of sort of gave me a push to give some space from
Hmm.
being at the meeting. So
In what way?
so my parents, they obviously weren't happy with me not dating someone that wasn't religious, but then
Mm-hmm.
some of his brothers were extremely against it and sort of tried to intervene and set deadlines for her attending classes or things, or making
Oh,
an effort to get baptized. And it was hard for me to kind of push against it, but I did what I could to say, just let me kind of deal with this myself and do what I need to do. But like it started getting a lot more extreme where they would sort of like indirectly threaten the both of us, and that kind of led to, so they're like, okay, you can't see her anymore, she's not going to attend things. And so
And how old were you when this was happening? Were you an adult?
yeah, I was an adult, I wasn't a kid.
Okay, just checking that these adults were trying to intervene in two adults' consenting
Yeah,
relationship.
I
Okay,
was
just making sure we're on the same page.
I think I was 24 or 25, so
Wow.
not old enough to know any better apparently. But
Well, it's part of the culture. It's almost like you
yeah,
just grow up with
so
it.
because they were getting very full on, with me not seeing her and wanting to figure out where she lived and trying to talk to her directly and stuff. And
Oh.
there was an incident when she came over to our house one time and my dad screamed at her because she bothered one of my siblings or something. But so they said I couldn't be with her, and so I had to make a decision whether I was going to keep seeing her or do as they said. And so there was a week where we weren't together, and basically one day I just kind of packed all my stuff into a car and I just left and I moved in with her. And there was
Oh man, I'm sure they love that.
yeah,
Wow.
it was quite turbulent. So I mean, maybe there's,
Wow.
I guess, a bit more context that I've left out of that, because so at that time I didn't have my driver's license because I was a bit naughty and got it suspended. But I also had this bike that I got around everywhere, an e-bike.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to get too conspiratorial, but people who know me know this story about how my bike was stolen one day, and we had a Ring camera.
Mm-hmm.
So three kids took it, and when I asked my dad about the footage, he kind of was a bit blasé about what had happened. And I talked to a few other people in my family, and they were like, you'd expect if you like told someone that something valuable of yours had been stolen that they'd be upset or shocked, but like it wasn't a surprise to them at all. So I often wonder if it was like an inside job, because
Like
that's
someone was
how,
like, here's $50, go take that kind of thing.
yeah, or someone in the family knocked it off. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I find it better not to, I guess, go into the rabbit hole of trying to decipher that. But that was big.
But I feel like it says a lot about your relationship that isn't something that's out of the question. Like
Yeah,
that's realistic potentially
yeah.
based on their pattern of behavior and history.
But I guess the reason that would be a significant thing is because that's how I got around. That was how I
Yeah.
traveled to see
Kept you trapped.
my girlfriend at the time, or go to work, or
Yeah, your
I would bike,
independence.
catch yeah. So if I didn't have that, then
You're
you know
relying on your family more.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I decided to not stay under the control and reliance of my family and moved out with my partner. And I was still going to the meeting, and
Isn't it crazy how long we stay even after
yeah,
things like that?
and yeah, this is what I mean. The meeting that I was at, they were very
Hmm.
supportive and helpful, and there's a lot of other things which um, I didn't really want to delve into this, but a lot of extra things that happened at home and with my
Mm-hmm.
work life, because I also worked with family, and there were some
Mm-hmm.
external dramas which sort of made things a bit more difficult too. But they were all very helpful and kind people, and but there obviously was things that standards and things that they kind of had too. So living with a partner that you weren't married to and isn't religious,
Very much a
what
no-no.
yeah, they were happy I was coming, and they understood that there was stuff that I was dealing with my family and extended family, but that still kind of was a big thing too. But as I kind of met more people and experienced more things in life, now that I had all this freedom away from my house, it became less and less of a real thing to me. And I guess now
Mm-hmm.
that there was less control and it was less mandated, it just
Mm-hmm.
it kind of became something that wasn't necessary anymore. And I guess it's difficult to kind of stay in that community when there's so much drama and strife with your family, the people that you're closest to, and it's almost impossible to explain to people that aren't religious. But even to people that are, like, you said that there's CYCs and extra stuff that you meet other people and you get this bigger sense of community. But it was just our family. So when that bubble was burst, and that
that our family isn't the one with this true truth. There's other people, and there's all these different positions and beliefs. And yeah, once the genie comes out of the bottle, you can't put it back in.
Was there anything in particular that they believed specifically in like this micro Christadelphian community that was different than the bigger community? Because it sounds like they kind of were gatekeeping a little bit of like, oh, like we're extra special compared to the regular special Christadelphians.
See, the crazy thing is they didn't even have any, I would say, unique belief. The big thing that they took their stand on, that they were like, oh, we know that we're right, is their position on divorce and remarried people, and they had like no association with anyone at all. Like no one could meet with them, and if people allowed people to meet with them, and that's kind of some, I guess, depending on people's age, some Sydney Christadelphians might know about my family and how they kind of jumped through different ecclesias because of that. But it's what's so funny to me is that like our family were big into sport and went to public schools. Like we would go to football games and stuff and watch footy and watch TV and do all these kinds of things, which for a lot of other Christadelphians in our area, they would say that that's stuff that
the
Christadelphians
progressive stuff.
don't do.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's like I said, it's this very weird split where most conservative Christadelphians are socially conservative too, and most liberal Christadelphians are socially liberal too. But our family had this weird dichotomy where religiously they were like very strict
on the conservative,
But then
living their day-to-day life, they're like, oh yeah, you can do kind of whatever with a lot of that entertainment stuff.
Drank at times, entertainment, sport, which I think a lot of Christadelphians view as like idolatry, and so yeah, they didn't really have any kind of special thing that made them, I guess, different from everybody else. But I guess it was just kind of gatekeepy.
Maybe just like ego, it sounds like, was what separated them from everyone else. It's just like, I'm just better than you, and so is my family. Like, you can't go here. You can't sit with us.
I mean, to that end, I don't think people were not allowed to meet with us from other meetings.
Didn't you say they were kind of had to be pre-approved? Like, I'm just trying to understand it because as someone who's never been.
Exactly. It's something like that where I think by the time that I can remember, it was just one of my uncle's wife's like mum and dad that also met with us, and the rest was just our family. So yeah, two members besides from our family in that meeting. So yeah, I don't know why someone would want to go and visit a meeting like that anyways. To
be fair, maybe it was kind of self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't want people, well, now they don't want to come either.
But now that I've left the wider Christadelphian community, it's like that stuff is just completely irrelevant. So yeah, there's not really anything that I can think of that when we talk to other people, they're like, oh, this is a bit, but we were just, it was just very, one thing I do remember, which it's not really a belief, but because we obviously didn't have a lot of different people that could play the piano, there were some times that people played the exact same 4 hymns. Like you might have 2 or 3 Sundays in a row where you sang the exact 4 hymns, and there's a time that I knew them all off by heart. Like I didn't even need to look at the hymn book. I was that pious, and I remember them so well.
So pious.
But when we moved meetings and changed hymn books, when they would play one of the songs that we used to play at our old meeting all the time, I would kind of just be like in a trance, taken back. And I was like, whoa, other people know these songs too. But
music has a strong emotional association for a lot of people.
Yeah. So I don't think there was anything to set them apart. I think you hit the nail on the head of it was just based on ego or some kind of false like stand that they'd taken to set themselves above other Christadelphians.
On this note of music, did you know the intro music that's in this podcast for our theme music? Okay, good.
I can't lie. A lot of the modern Christadelphian music, it is actually quite good. Like you're laughing.
Hey, it's free online. You can get your fix.
It is pretty good. And sometimes when I'm like in Spotify and I go through like my liked songs, there's some like modern Christadelphian music in there, and it's I don't listen to it now, but
Oh, I can't. It would get stuck in my head. All it takes is like a couple words and I can remember like a whole hymn.
I one time when I was on holidays with people asking like, what songs do you know off by heart? And I was like, bro, I got this. And there was like 6 or 7 different Christadelphian. Like, how do you remember this? I was just, I don't know what it is, but
Doing it every week, potentially singing it every week would
yeah,
probably help with
but
the
it just
memory.
sticks in my head too. Like,
Well,
there
that's
was,
music for you.
there's so many Christadelphian songs that I just knew completely off by heart. And
Well,
it's so annoying because there's no like trivia or anything like
that will ever use it and make it
yeah,
relevant.
it's not useful, and I can't sing either as well, so it's not like I can use it to pass or like impress anybody. So
Yeah.
just me badly singing these Christian songs.
Yeah, but I do love that that song has resonated for Christadelphians around the world because I remember picking it as like the most iconic one that I could think of, and that was always played at our, ecclesia and at other ecclesias we would visit. So I'm glad to hear that even in Australia, that was one that was familiar.
I don't know if this is a common thing for in meetings that you ever attended, but there's a lot of, I guess, the more conservative meetings in Australia are very old school buildings. Like there's this.
Yeah, we're usually, yeah.
The vast majority of meetings in Australia, they're in these big old grand halls that have been there for 50 plus years probably, but they kind of all have like these big slogans and I guess easily agreeable phrases on the walls. I don't know if that's something
No, never
that you
seen
ever
slogans.
noticed.
We had boring wood paneling, just like this dull, shiny, like fake wood kind of thing,
Yeah.
polished. And it was just a whole room full of it. And there was absolutely nothing on the walls, no pictures, other churches, people have like statues or like art and stuff. There's absolutely nothing. You just had the curtains around the windows and you had wood paneling. That was it, and that was generally the go-to, or if they didn't have the paneling, they would have just, like, painted walls, like white or tan or something, like, neutral, but no art, no slogans, no nothing like
What you
that.
mean. I know what you mean about the wood paneling. I feel like most people
Yeah.
listening can picture
It was common, yeah.
themselves there. But it was very common to have like not even verses, but small phrases from Bible verses and like plastered on the walls.
Well, my mom did that in our dining room, so I can at least picture it because she would just, like, stencil them on the walls.
Oh, at least you had a little bit of art somewhere. But yeah, seek ye
Yeah.
first the kingdom of God was probably, I'd say, the most common phrase that you kind
Okay.
of see on different
Wow.
walls throughout
Yeah.
different meetings in Australia because they're these old buildings. Like that's a very foundational belief of the Christadelphians and an important
Mhm.
verse.
That's kind of their whole thing is like, we're gonna live kind of shitty lives this life. That way we'll get into this kingdom when we
Yeah,
die.
something
Or
like that.
Jesus returns, but somehow,
Yeah.
generation after generation.
And that's another thing that I feel like maybe is quite mutual for people that have left is like this whole like notion that we're brought up with that maybe it's just an Australian thing, but we're kind of taught that like obviously the Christadelphians have the true religious belief and the correct Christian doctrine, but like Catholics were this evil like
That goes back to the core of Christadelphianism.
yeah,
That's not just
they're
Australians.
like
Yeah.
this like painted evil, and then like I
Yeah.
remember as a
And they're
kid like
so glamorous
yeah,
with
it's
their
like it's
churches.
so
Like it's
cool
colorful
compared to
stained glass,
Yeah.
statues.
Like I saw this video in, I don't know where it was, but it was in some Catholic church, and they've got this contraption to whiz around this like this.
Yeah, there's
I
like an
don't.
incense thing. Is that what you're thinking? Like the ball
Yeah,
and the chain kind of thing, and he just like
yeah.
blasts
But
incense on
it's
people and like
spinning around the
splashes water and
church.
whatever. Yeah,
It's
there's a lot
it's
of stuff going on.
it's yeah. Well, we didn't get anything cool like that at all. It's quite sad in a
It
way.
it's kind of like a whole show. I went to Catholic services for like Christmas with one of the Christmas Catholics where they go like once a year, and so I'd be like, oh, okay, sure, we'll go for like our once a year trip to the church. And so it was really weird seeing like all this stuff like candles and the incense and art statues is very 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 different vibe than the Christadelphians. And I remember being told that like the cross was evil, like we couldn't have that. That was like a bad to have that symbol. It's idolatry. But like everything that they loved, they just like Christadelphians kind of shit on the Catholics for like everything that
Yeah,
was different about them.
I mean, I guess a lot of people who have left probably don't really have a faith that they prescribe to now, but I feel like everybody objectively can say that Catholic churches are really, really cool looking, especially from the outside. Like they're
Oh yeah.
obviously as an institution, they're quite iffy, but like their architecture is quite top notch.
Oh yeah, like people go to England and like Europe and look at those old churches. Like those are major tourist destinations because
Oh,
they're so beautiful.
yeah. We obviously don't have a lot of that in Australia because we're a very young country, but
Yeah, America's kind of more similar to that too. Some of the old cities might have some, but not like England.
which I guess is even more especially sad. So where we first met, we rented from a school, so we were using a school's auditorium. And then the new place that we moved to, we kind of jumped around a lot because the councils, for whatever reason, were quite flaky with, I guess, committing to letting us hire somewhere. But so we were meeting at one community centre in Western Sydney and then in a different one. But like, it didn't even have any big slogans or anything on the wall. It's
Well, yeah, if you're renting, it's always a little more awkward when you're in the rental ones.
Yeah.
We always owned our own hall where I was at, so it was always like available to us and just used by us. But of course, it was so boring you wouldn't even be able to tell.
The second place we moved to, especially after COVID, had we basically exclusively rented the community hall from the council, but like because it's like this community hall, and like most people can think of like the plush chairs or like the fabric, or some had like wooden fold out ones. Okay. We just had like your typical basic plastic ones that you get out. Do you guys have community halls in America?
Where, yeah, there's community centers. Often people use libraries more so for like small community events, and they have like a little room you can rent out. So there's less of those now. But yeah, there's places like that where you can rent it for events.
Because we didn't have any religious like imagery or iconography or anything, we've just got all these little chairs and tables out in this little hall in the middle of this country area in Western Sydney. It must have looked like an AA meeting or something. like the only thing that would, like, I guess, tip people off to it not being that is the fact that everyone's dressed up really fancily.
Yeah.
So.
But I mean, even AA has religious undertones to it, where they want you to like believe in a higher power or something like that, from what I'm aware. So honestly, even seeing the Bibles, they'd be like, "Well, maybe they're just really far along. They're getting their chips or whatever."
Yeah. Wait, why are they doing shots at the end? What the heck?
Oh, the shots of wine. Yeah. Did you guys do the shot glasses, not the goblet?
They're starting again. They're back to square one. Yeah. So we actually, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I feel like maybe back in the day, but I feel like that's never been a thing in Australia. The whole goblet sharing thing, the drinky all of the cup.
Oh, you guys weren't disgusting like us? Wow.
Yeah, no. I actually never had even heard of it until really? One time we were visiting a meeting in Canada, and I was like, bro, this is not hygienic. Like,
yeah, it's not.
And you know, a lot of people talk about in Australia, like when you're young and then you get baptized. And so, like I said, I was baptized, I guess, later than the average Australian Christadelphian.
Yeah.
So most people get to drink a shot of
18,
wine
right? Yeah.
before they're 18. But a lot of people talked about and like made faces at the different wines and that they tasted quite gross. But I never really kind of had that experience in Australia. But I remember it was like a double whammy when I went to Canada, that not only did I have to share whatever germs people had, but also
you're
their
wiping your mouth just talking about it.
Yeah.
But you also couldn't. But you couldn't drink.
The wine was disgusting. It tasted like ethanol or something, like something that you used
like
to clean
vinegar.
Something.
Yeah.
Oh, it was terrible. But I also got people's germs too. So it's not even like it was a nice wine to reward me for the disgusting act that I was doing.
Yeah. I remember the Australians being really salty when they visited the US, and they're like, "We've been drinking since we were 18," and we're like, "Sorry, you're 20, so you can't drink here." They were not happy.
Yeah, most Christadelphians in Australia probably drink responsibly after 18, but there's big culture here learning early so that you can handle yourself when you're older. If
Okay.
anyone's listening to this and considering, is it worthwhile getting baptized under 18 to get a shot of wine? It's not. Trust me, it's not.
No, a shot's not doing anything. What I would love to know of like one bougie meeting who always has like the best wine, and they're all like, "Yeah, we're looking forward to this one." That would be
Oh,
amazing. Because I've only heard of terrible wine, really.
I remember hearing about there's some meeting in Australia that apparently like flexed that they got wine from Jerusalem or something, and like, come on, man.
Are you
Come
kidding?
on.
That sounds like your meeting. The ego in that, like the
Yeah,
little bit of
no,
elitism of like, well, we only drink pure Jerusalem wine here, unlike you heathens.
yeah. They could have. I don't think so. I don't remember seeing any Hebrew
It probably because
wines
they
or
didn't
anything.
even think of it. They're like, damn, that is a good idea.
No, but yeah, I do remember actually one time at one of my friends' meetings in Queensland. I remember I was like, "Whoa, this is actually really tasty," and I was like,
I went up to one of the sisters. I'm like, hey, what wine is this? I'd love to drink it, like outside of meeting times. And she showed me. I looked it up, and I kid you not, it was $4 for 2 liters.
That's amazing. There you go.
They were
So it's
using like the
basically just
cheapest
grape
wine
juice.
possible, and it was so tasty. But yeah, I never. Maybe that was my superpower. I just was immune to the gross flavors of all the ones people used in Australia.
Yeah, but you never went to the one in Rhode Island. They were known for having like the worst wines. So being in Australia, fortunately, you never had to deal with that one.
Did you have the double whammy too, where you had to share it and it gross, or they used the little individual serves?
I think by the time I got baptized, they were at individual cups because I think by then, a few years before then, we had a disabled couple come in, and the one had like a physical impairment. And so I think in order to be more accommodating for their disabilities, I think that was the push to have individual little baby cups on the tray as opposed to the fancy like silver goblet that they used to have and everyone just shared. But I remember like watching my mom share it and there was a lipstick all around the rim of it from all the different sisters. And I was just like, oh, that's just like a thing my mom does. And I would just watch her and I was like, weird. And I like watch her lipstick stick to it and
Was there ever like a thing at meetings that they did that? People like raced to sit at the front so that they got the first shot at it?
My grandma, I think, always got the first shot of it, and then she was also the first to leave. So I don't know if she was she was not the most people friendly person. So I wonder if she was like, "Yeah, I'm not doing that." I do wonder
If I
now.
wore lipstick, I'd definitely get as nice wide little spray of it as possible, just for the next person.
I feel like that's when you know to like turn it and be like, well, let me at least avoid that spot where I know someone's mouth has been. I think people just like rotated it around hoping for the best. But it's also weird when it's all like your family and stuff, like your uncles and your aunts, and they're all
Yeah,
putting their mouth on the same thing. I was like, that feels so dirty. Oh.
yeah. Luckily, something I only ever had to deal with one time in total.
Yeah, I don't it's so long ago, I don't remember, but I remember that very much going out of fashion, and then I'm pretty sure it would have gone like nail in the coffin during COVID times,
Yeah.
as people moved to Zoom, and then I'm sure when they got back, anyone who had the goblet retired it.
Makes me wonder if there are any other crazy old-timey different traditions that people now in the church would think is crazy.
Well, that's what the history episodes are for.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go back to your story. So let's talk more about the process of leaving for you, because you had said you had worked that one job. How significant was that to you leaving compared to like the relationship and stuff?
So I was starting to attend less and less, and I don't think that the job cared that much about how much I attended and whatever. It's not like they were like running over with a fine tooth comb how often I was there, how often I wasn't. But they didn't do like oh, you're a Christadelphian? What do you believe? XYZ. It's just like
Yeah, like a test, yeah.
me saying it and that I was baptized was enough to sort of, I guess, get that part of it rolling. But eventually down the track, there was, I guess, some friction, I suppose, between me and the upper management, not related to anything spiritual at all, just, I guess, with job stuff. And then I left that, and then, yeah, it was kind of almost simultaneous. Like, I went on this trip in between school terms. I came back, and then
that was kind of the beginning of the end at that job. But also, I don't think I went back to the meeting after that. So it was like right in the middle of, it would have been 2022. In July of that year, I went on a little holiday, and I just kind of, I did have this gradual process of moving away from family and my family not being at my church and that kind of thing, and then not working there. And it's like all these little ties and strings that were attaching me slowly were kind of dropping off. And I kind of was like, who am I doing this for anymore? Like what am I trying to prove? Like I said, a big motivation behind my baptism was, trying to sort of, I guess, make my family happy and to help with my family dynamic. And, now that those outside influences are gone, and then it's just, what do I believe? What do I want to do? That's kind of, I guess, when I was like, okay, this is not for me anymore. I don't really see what I'm gaining from it. There's also the added factors of it being really far away. Like I said, when I say it was in Western Sydney, it's like right at the foot of the mountains of Sydney. And we have to remember as well that I didn't have my bike and I didn't have a driver's license, so it was a very long way to get to. So that was another thing that sort of contributed to that difficulty of access. That was probably one of the most minor of reasons for me to stop going.
I'm sure there would have been people giving you a drive if you had really needed a ride.
There wasn't really anyone that lived there. So Sydney does have a pretty good train system. So I would super early in the morning get on the train and go out into Western Sydney, and someone would pick me up from the train station. But yeah, it was a long way. And even when we're driving, it was like 35, 40 minutes. So yeah, the job didn't have a big bearing on it. But it was just another thing, as I say, like seeing the people at this. This is meant to be like the holy school, like the school where you educate your kids better than everybody, or at least spiritually better than everybody. And I guess I need to share a few things that I saw behind there. There is a big culture at the school about bullying, not even between, like, I guess, religious kids bullying not religious kids, but like just
within the group. I have heard that. Yeah, that's been probably the biggest thing I've heard.
A very, very big thing too. And every day I would see a kid like crying to a teacher seemingly about that. And like, because bullying happens at every school, unfortunately. It's just the way it is. But like, at least at our school, like, you kind of just had your group of friends and you all just hung out and like you kind of just settled it. We were also like at a very cheap school of like only boys, so I guess maybe we just dealt with things in a more abrasive way. But it was just crazy. And even seeing how non-religious teachers were treated compared to religious teachers, and it's just it was like two different sides of the school. And coming in and seeing that, I was like, wow, I'm glad I didn't go here. There was apparently some people close to our family that encouraged our family to enroll us at the school. I don't know what our family had against it, but
yeah, it's kind of surprising given that they were very religious. That kind of would have made sense.
Well, yeah, it opened my eyes a lot. I guess just the more and more you see from these people that are meant to know better and to be walking a better standard than everybody else.
Yeah,
it just kind of it makes you question things.
Yeah,
and as well, the more I interacted with people that had like no faith or spirituality wasn't a big thing to them, and seeing like how kind and generous they were, it's like it's something I heard seldom about how could people be moral if they don't have faith. And it's something that I never believed, to be honest. I thought that's just silly. It's a very bad thing to think, because the reality of it's pretty scary. Obviously, when I did consider myself closer to believing the things that the Christadelphians did believe, I did obviously think that I was on a higher standard, but I didn't think that people were downright evil and terrible just because they didn't have faith. Another big thing too that I guess shook things for me is like how little it seemed the Christadelphians seemed to do in terms of charity work and helping people.
And the more charitable people I saw were the Catholics compared to the Christadelphians, and that's who they always said were the bad, evil people.
And maybe this is just like my family's kind of belief, because it's hard for me to compare what the actual broader Christadelphian attitude compared to what we were, but our family kind of, it seemed to like poo-poo like preaching work and mission work and that kind of thing. So a lot of friends of mine would go overseas and preach and do mission work, and
Oh, that's like serious mission work, like trips.
Yeah, and no one in our family ever did that. And
Okay.
it's, to the
Some
best of
people
my
in my
knowledge,
family did do some mission trips, yeah.
I don't think that's a wider Christadelphian belief that it's like, a waste, or that it needs to be strictly spiritual based. But that was a big belief in our family, and I just thought that, that's surely a good way to get your foot in the door is by helping people, and like, a big part of Jesus' teaching too was helping people
Yeah,
first before anything spiritual. Like feeding
absolutely. That
people
was
and
his whole
healing
thing.
people.
Yeah, he
So
brought peace and healing to people, which is a really loving thing to do. Whereas I think even the people I know who did those trips, it was more geared towards just preaching. And I know that was kind of the mission of our ecclesia whenever we were doing something like they would got money donated and so they would just go to like local events and just like try to force people to take Bible classes and stuff. It was all about like come to our meeting, come to our events, study our study tools, but I don't remember them ever like helping people with food or like volunteering at an event to like pick up trash and like doing things where you're actually engaging with your community on that level and like helping people or helping improve the community that you live in.
yeah, I think in the wider community, there were some initiatives to build wells and stuff in Africa and help build houses and things. Like it was a dual effort, but yeah, I thought it was quite understated, given I guess it being preaching to everybody and helping the poor was like I guess core tenet of what Jesus believed. So yeah, that was another one of the things that didn't make a lot of sense to me.
It sounds like you just had a lot of disentangling to do, as well as kind of giving yourself permission to become the person you actually were instead of always going, what would other people want me to do? But what would I actually want to do and what feels right to me?
That was it was a big thing, like how I would be perceived doing something. And maybe it was like when we were on doing stuff on Zoom, but I remember I was like not engaged with it at all, but I would just like log in and just like put my computer somewhere in the house. It was like ticking
So
the box.
someone saw it, yeah.
Yeah, just me that I was there, and like,
Hmm. A
or
lot of
even
peer
like
pressure.
when I was at the meeting, like I remember very quickly when you take the bread and wine and see, I've already forgotten what they say, all the other stuff. But when you're like thinking, or you're meant to be praying, or I guess reflecting, I remember very quickly that I was just like counting to 30 in my head. Like I just like literally just sit there, count to 30, and then like hope
Open your
that
eyes again.
most other people it had taken them about that long too. So
Hmm.
yeah,
That's so funny.
a lot of it was just to be seen to be doing the right thing or fitting in with other people.
Yeah, it's really just mimicking the behavior, even though you're not technically really following the behavior that's stated. Like, you know, you're supposed to be like praying or reflecting or whatever. And then you're like, I'm just going to count because from the outward appearance, it looks like I'm doing that.
Yeah,
That's an interesting strategy. I haven't heard that before, actually, of anyone doing that. But I haven't really asked specifically, like, what you did during the bread and wine.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's the funny thing. Like, I don't know about you, but it doesn't seem like that's something that's like directly explained to anybody. I feel like that's a
No.
very interpretive thing.
I remember asking my mom, I was like, what do I do when like they do the bread and wine? Like, what do I do when I sit there? I was like, I literally don't know. You just sit there quietly. Like, what's happening?
I remember, like, when I was first baptized, it was like confessional. I was like, I did X, Y, Z, blah, 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 blah. And then later on, I was like a bit more broad and abstract because I was like, this is going to be hard. If I have a bad week, I've got to do it for 5 minutes, confessing everything. In a way, confessional's a lot easier. But yeah, I'd say probably, yeah, within a year, instead of just, you know, counting my rosary or whatever while I was doing it, I started to count.
Very interesting. I'm so glad you shared that. Anything else related to the leaving part for you? It sounds like it was really just a slow process of disentangling, but that you hadn't been in as deep as some other people. Like I'm sure you listened to Rob's episode, and he was really couldn't have been in any deeper at that point. As you know, someone who genuinely believed it and was very active with preaching and just being engaged with it at all levels. It seems like it was more the social stuff, like really keeping you in, but also pushing you out with how they're treating the person you were in a relationship with, as well as the amount of kind of controllingness over you and the constantly kind of drawing you into these disputes that it sounds like were their disputes and you were just associate as a family member and it wasn't really like your fights.
Yeah, so I guess being younger, there was a lot less responsibility kind of on me, and so
Mm.
I guess just all the different things that were going on at the time kind of made it sort of a lot easier to step by step kind of draw back. Like, so because I was dating someone that wasn't religious, there was
Mm.
I
Some support maybe because
yeah
it's
yeah
hard
yeah
when everyone's a Christadelphian. Like it's nice to talk to one person and be like, I know you're a good person and you're not a Christadelphian and I need to know that that exists.
yeah that definitely made it a lot easier, because she said, "Come and live with me. How you're being treated isn't good," and she never really pushed me, but whatever I did, she supported and helped me, and that
Hmm.
made things a lot easier. But because I was dating someone that wasn't religious, I was meant to give an exhortation, and like a few weeks before, they're like, some members of our meeting not sure
Ooh.
how committed you are, and we're like, we can't exactly let you go. Well, they said that they gave me a choice, but it's clear they were only going to accept me
Mm.
saying, oh yeah, I guess I shouldn't do this. But
There was only one good answer to that choice, it sounds like.
it's really funny because I was in a very strange headspace at the time, because I was excited to do it and to talk about what I wanted to talk about, and then about a month or so before I was about to do it, being told, oh, okay, you can't speak on the platform, was
Hmm.
quite sad, because
So
I
demoralizing, really.
yeah I understood what it was. It was very frustrating because the way that it was being presented by the person who was saying this to me, it was twofold. They're like, "Oh, some people in our meeting might not think that this is the best look," and also
Hmm.
presenting like I had a choice too, which I clearly didn't. But it was yeah, it's sad because but I did what I could to help out at our meeting. But a big thing with our meeting is we had a lot of old people, and well, this I think maybe was just before we had our split based on hymn books, maybe, because the people that would have
Mm.
had the
Oh, so maybe
biggest
there's
problem.
already people with strong opinions were kind of already just making more issues.
Yeah. I mean, but I understand why they would be upset about someone in their meeting, preaching or doing a sermon or whatever, I guess, that is in a relationship with someone who isn't of the same faith or doesn't have a faith. I understand why they'd be upset about them.
I'm just thinking about it and I'm realizing I don't think there's a female equivalent to that. Like as a sister, I don't remember anyone ever like finding a way to like manipulate me to punish me for dating someone outside the faith, which I did plenty of. Um because like I have heard of a lot of men and it happened in my ecclesia where they'd be like, "Oh, like one of my cousins was in like a long committed relationship, like over a decade with someone who was not in the meeting and they never came either. Like they did not come until I think they had been together like 12 years, something like that. And so everyone knew this person and they were not interested in joining. And to my knowledge, they never did. But eventually, after all that time, they started stripping him of his role, was my understanding from what I remember. But, like, I did the same thing, but I guess because I was never at the podium, it's funny, I had so little power, they had no power to take away from me to, like,
Maybe
shame
they
me into
maybe they could just
compliance.
load you up, like you have to cook food for the entire meeting or
Yeah,
something.
it's like, what is there to punish the women? We have so little, it's like,
Yeah.
whatever. Like,
But I was very involved in my
yeah.
next meeting, which mostly was like I wouldn't leap to say that they were judgmental. I think it's fair the way that they viewed that, and it's funny, if all my family was still at the meeting or was any other family, I feel like they would have been a lot harder on me and put pressure on me as an ecclesia and done more I guess interventional measures. But because I had all this family drama and extra stuff going on that people were worried about me, they're like, okay, we kind of need this guy to be okay in his life, like we can't strip this away from him too. But like I said earlier,
Oh,
I was
like
involved.
some empathy, understanding what was
Yeah,
going on in your life with all of the broader dynamics. Well, I guess that's
be-
good to hear. I'd rather that.
because I think like the drama that my family created at the meeting, and also like the way that my family had treated me, they're like, you know, he's probably not doing something that's great, but maybe
He's
he is the victim here. So we kind of got to cut him some slack.
mm,
But like I said, I tried to be as involved as I could. Like I was on the committee for the young people at our meeting, and I did a lot during COVID, but then also after.
we still utilized our Zoom a lot, and that was basically something that I footed completely myself, and which I'm not very technology savvy at all, but I did like helping people connect with it. And even though, like, my belief wasn't super strong, helping people and them saying thank you was like, it is a good feeling. It's just something that humans like to do, help out other people. But yeah, I do just want to quickly say that. But the new meeting that I was at was a very nice, loving, supporting community. They were very, very good to me and helped me a lot, both when I was there and when I was leaving. And they supported and helped me. And on a human level, they were very kind people. And I'm sure if things went differently, and I said, this isn't really for me, and there wasn't any drama, they still, like, I still get people from that meeting, talking to me and helping me, and on a human level they were all really, really nice, kind people. And
that's nice.
Yeah, I have a lot of love for that meeting and those people that were there, even if we don't have the same spiritual values.
I think
it's just a shame that they don't have the true Christian truth, though. They need to learn a bit more from my family.
Don't tell them you said that.
No, I don't think any of them would say it publicly, but I'm sure maybe besides from me, they'd be happy to see my family is going somewhere else and not causing any more problems for them.
Yeah. Sounds like they were at a tumultuous time among all these ecclesias. But let's keep going with your story. How has your life changed since leaving?
So I guess I talked about going from my old church, which was, we kind of were pretty liberal in our day-to-day lives, but then religiously conservative, to going to a more middle ground where our social life, we were suddenly like, oh, these guys do all these things. This is a bit weird. But religiously, we were like clashed with them for being too conservative for them. Like, being able to do things that I'd like to do is great. Like, I love sports so much. Sport was one of the ways that I was able to escape the little bubble of our family and church as a young person. But some of my cousins did get to play sport on weekends, but we didn't, and I was so jealous of them.
Aww.
But like, I was able to sign up to play club sport on the weekend, and
nice, yeah.
I was able to go out more, and it's not really related to anything we've talked to, but this is just the craziest little coincidence that never would have happened had I still been in the Christadelphians. But there's this comedy club in Sydney City that occasionally they have free shows. I should probably add that it's a gay club too, so not somewhere that a Christadelphian should ever be a gay comedy club. But so me and my partner at the time, we would go there when there was free show. But anyway, so one time we're sitting towards the front, and the MC is talking to me, and he's trying to find something interesting about me.
Oh no!
I was working at Nando's at the time, and he's like, man, you're just not giving me anything. Like, you got to tell me something interesting. Can you tell me something interesting about yourself? I was like, oh, I was in a cult. And then everybody starts dying, and he's like, listen, if someone is asking you about yourself next time, don't start with what you do for work. Start with, I was in a cult. But later on, it finishes, and so it's in the basement of this gay bar. So I'm walking up the stairs, and there's this person standing at the top that was in the show. And he's like, you, come here. I need to talk to you. And I was like, oh, dear.
Okay.
And, like, you know what I mean? You can kind of tell how, like, Christadelphians dress. They kind of had that Christadelphian swag. You know what I mean?
No.
But I was like, he's like, so you're Luke, right? What's your name? Oh, I'm Luke Mansfield. I was like,
oh,
he's
no.
Like, so you're in a cult, right? I was like, oh, my goodness. Are the Christadelphian police here to arrest me? Why are they here? Why did I come here? But he's like, and who's your family? And I was like, da, 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 da. And he's like, I'm an ex-Christadelphian too. And I was like, what? No way. What are the chances? But I was like, I was so scared. But he was like,
are the Christadelphian police here?
like, do you know what I mean about the way Christadelphians dress when they're not at church?
Yeah.
Like, they have that archetypal look. But he pulled me, and I was so scared, man. I was like,
you're like, this is too familiar. Oh no, someone knows.
He knew my family and everything, and
right? Everyone does. Like, it's so close.
Yeah. So
And you come from a family with a big name, because I was looking at the Christadelphian magazine archive, and it sorts it by editor, and one of the editors of the official Christadelphian magazine is the same last name as you.
Yeah, HHP. I'm not sure
Yep.
how. I don't think he's super directly related to me. Like I think he'd be some kind of uncle or something. But yeah, the Mansons are a very, very prominent family in Christadelphia.
Yeah.
So much so that I can't think of anyone in like my direct family that's left. So that was another big thing
Oh,
too. That
really? Wow.
I mean, there are some people that I think might have gone since I've left, but I don't know how public they are with all that stuff. So
Yeah.
don't want to speculate on other people's.
It's hard that you can't really confirm it. It's kind of awkward to talk about, and
Yeah,
especially when you're not
but
close with them, and you're like,
yeah. So our family has a big reputation.
Probably not the best one, but one of the most well known families in Australia. So yeah, so it's not much of a
for
surprise.
better or
But
worse.
if since he'd left, he'd definitely know. Maybe not me directly, but my family at Broad. So
I can't believe you bumped into an ex-Christadelphian at the gay comedy show. I have a question. Did you actually like follow up with that person, like be friends on Facebook or
oh
anything? Like, did you
yeah.
guys like connect?
We talk every now and again, and he's like he was really excited because someone from my family and like extensive background, he was quite enthused, but also it moved me a lot because he was a lot older and he had kids, so he had a lot of stuff that was very, very complicated in the process of leaving. Yeah, he enthused me a lot, saying, you're so young, most people leave when they're so much older, like you've gotten out of it, and he did actually recommend Rob's book to me, and I remember reading it, and it helped a lot. And so being able to connect with him in the group, I remember I saw his comment on something, and I replied to him and said, "Your book helped me so much." Yeah,
I remember seeing that comment. Yeah,
yeah.
because I
So
hadn't read his book at that point, and I was like, "Wait, I need to read this."
yeah, and so I guess some kind of habits don't really leave us. Like the guy that I met at the bar, the way he talked about the book is the same way that a Christadelphian would talk about books of the Bible. Like that studious,
Like I talked about earlier about knowing all those hymns off by heart. Like
Yeah,
I guess it doesn't
yeah.
really leave us that like even I guess the way you talk about history and stuff like that need to kind of sort of know things ostensibly. No, it's a good thing. I'm saying it's a.
I was like, is this gonna get personal?
No. But that way that we kind of know something so deeply and just recall it.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's kind of I guess a behavior that since it's been drilled into us, it's something that we can't really forget.
And also just being raised to be little smarty pants.
Yeah.
Just like learning so much and studying.
Oh, it brings me back to I did have some friends that were quite religious, and I didn't do this so much, but my next younger brother down, he would love to debate with his other religious friends because
Oh man.
in a lot of other religions, they're not as Bible studious as us. And so I would hang out with them and I'd talk to them about the Bible and I'd ask them about all these quotes and they're like, what? And I would do them off by heart and they're like, okay, that's kind of crazy. I'm like, no, dude, this is the Bible. It's so awesome. We got to know all these things.
Yeah.
And I was not great with quotes at all. So the ones that did stick, thankfully it become unstuck. But yeah, I didn't get arrested by the Christadelphian Police, thankfully, that night.
Thank goodness. I was getting scared for you, living vicariously through you. It's like, oh no. I can only imagine if it was like the presiding brother shows up. It was like, hey.
He's like, well, when you got baptized, you made a commitment, and so now you got to fulfill it.
Yeah, and he'd start listing off the Bible verses that are basically like the rules you've broken. Be like, according to Deuteronomy.
Yeah. But I mean, I probably should have thought about it better because bar 1, gay bar 2, like, I mean, comedy show as well, like, what Christadelphia, unless they're super undercover, is going to be at an event like this. So,
yeah, I would be shocked, but I think that sounds so fun, and it's cool to hear that you've expanded, culture around you and what you're doing, and not following all those strict Christadelphian rules and culture that you were raised in, but figuring out what you actually enjoy, besides sports, but gay comedy.
Yeah.
Are there any positives that you reflect on from being Christadelphian?
Well, there's the thing that we just mentioned about the studious and how kind of Christadelphians are taught to kind of absorb stimulus.
You think you're still like that, like in college and stuff, like in
Mm,
school, or?
yeah, no. I guess I do kind of still have that mentality that when I
Mm.
find something interesting, I'm like, oh, I've got to know all about this. I find when I'm listening to podcasts or watching shows and they mention some historical event, I'll
Oh, and you
immediately
Google it?
pause
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
go through so much of it. And I'm like,
Me too. I'm such a dork like that, though. It's so
so.
fun.
But yeah, being able to speak confidently and sort of, I guess, criticize things analytically is something that's taught a lot. I guess with the way that we were taught to study the Bible, but I also
Yeah.
got to travel a lot as well with different conferences and camps and things, and I got to go overseas to New Zealand and Canada through connections with Christadelphians.
Yeah, the Canada one's kind of random. I get New Zealand is, closer.
Yeah, so my mum's from there, and so there was a
Okay,
conference that we
that's
went
why.
to, but
Okay.
Canada was actually a Christadelphian partner I had. They had good family friends that were in Canada. And they were going on a trip, and they're like, "Oh, do you want to come with us?" And I was like, "Okay,
Yeah.
yeah." And so actually, yeah, I don't want to get too off topic from the question you asked, but that's something that, or maybe it was the one with Rob, how Christadelphians just automatically vouch for each other. It's just
Oh,
so
yeah, I think that
crazy.
was Rob when they loaned him their car. I was just like, have fun.
But I mean, it's because I went to public school and obviously had a wider range of different people that I'd interacted with. I wouldn't say I was suspicious, but I wouldn't vouch for someone straight away. But while I was if Christadelphian asked to borrow my car, I 100% would have let them, for sure.
Yeah, I feel
Like,
like that was what I grew up with. Very close knit, and we always had people just coming and going who were Christadelphians. We had a Christadelphian just living in our driveway in a trailer one summer. I was
yeah,
like, oh, yeah, he just lives there now.
I guess that's another
Okay.
good thing. Another good thing too, um, like I mentioned earlier about charity lacking, but they were very charitable towards each other. I know in
Yeah.
our meeting especially, old people were always looked after, and especially we had
Yep.
quite a lot of older people that had come into the truth, so they'd have
Okay.
a partner that wasn't religious, but it would just kind of be them, their
Mm-hmm.
kids wouldn't be in the church or whatever, or grandkids, and it would just be them. I feel like that'd probably be pretty common, the way that they looked after older people and the way they looked after people in the church as well. Someone in the church that I was last a part of, when I was going through a difficult time, they had a flat which they lent me for quite a few months without having to pay rent. So they like I guess there's the extremes in how
Mm-hmm.
people
Yeah,
can
very
be
generous
emboldened because of
there.
their faith. But most Christadelphians towards people they know, Christadelphians, were very, very generous.
Yeah, there's definitely good people, and I've definitely seen that kind of thing a lot. People would very quickly open up their houses and make food and share that kind of thing, and kind of look out for each other's kids a bit.
Yeah, I don't know if this was a big thing in the States, but it was quite uncommon in Australia about fraternal lunches where they'd have big ecclesial lunches where everyone brings something.
Yeah, we did that once a month, I would say.
Yeah, so I I talk about my family causing trouble, but when we first came to our meeting, it
What'd you
was like a
do?
once a month thing. But my dad was like, we should do this every weekend,
Oh,
every
God.
Sunday,
Ugh.
and sort of that kind of became a norm at our meeting. And so there were times that I was lacking a bit at my home meeting, but the meeting that my family went to is a big old church, and they're blessed to have, I guess, a lot of Indian and Fijian, and also Filipino as well. Christadelphians, whereas ours was just mostly white Australians.
Okay.
So they would have, number one, a lot of spread because they had their own hall. They were able to cook a lot better. But they
Mm-hmm.
also had these really, really diverse sets of meals too.
Yeah, it sounds like different cultures.
Yeah. So yeah, and they also at that meeting they had a lot of aunties, as we I guess we call them, of renown who were very good cooks. Yeah,
It looks like you're
daydreaming a
getting
little bit
hungry
about
over
their
there now.
lunches. Maybe I should revert for a Sunday or two and go and partake in it.
Just
No,
load up. Yeah, get some
my
samosas.
my whole family's there, so it's probably not
Oh,
Not
no, they would hunt you
not
down.
worth it. But
You would have to go somewhere where they don't know you, but the problem is everyone around you knows you.
that's something I've always considered, like going undercover and seeing like not how much I could get away with, but like how much they just vouch for me. Because like as I said, it's like I was able to get a job seemingly based off being a Christadelphian, but like would they let me speak without knowing anything? Like
If you just went in and said, I'm brother so and so, can I give a guest exhortation today?
well, they probably would have someone lined up, but like if I were like met there
I
for like a
remember
month or
people
so, would they put me?
I remember people being thrilled when someone else would come and be like, oh, I had one prepared, but now I can just save it in my back pocket for later. And like if someone got sick, they could be like tapped in and have one ready.
An
But they loved a
impromptu
guest
exhortation.
speaker. Yeah. They'd be like, oh, yeah, you go up. Yep, yep. You take over. That's no problem. I remember them like trading.
Wow.
Like they were all like the handshakes before a meeting where I'd see the presiding brother going from guy to guy, being like, hey, can you do a prayer? Hey, can you do a reading? And he'd confirm that the exhorter was there and that the exhortation was like on cue to go. But I remember if a guest came, he'd be like, "Hey, like, you wanna do it today?"
Wow.
Yeah.
So they could just get up and unvetted say what they want, basically.
I think most of the time they knew who they were because I remember they would always go up to guests and ask them like what meeting they were with and like what their name was because they would do those like introductions for the guests where they'd be like, "Today we're visited by brother and sister so and so from the X, meeting." And everyone would be like, "Oh, okay, well that's who those random people are over there." Because you know all your usual people. So they would just introduce anyone who like didn't belong. So it's not the kind of church where you can just sneak in and like sit in the back. Like someone will approach you.
Yep, they'll
They'll
know.
ask you your name. They'll ask where you're from. So it's like everyone knows, so it would be a tough
I can't go on and imagine
scheme.
speaking to is what you're saying. They wouldn't know enough about me.
Well, I mean, you actually probably could because they don't know anything about you. They'd be like, oh, you go to that meeting? You could make up a town in Australia and be like, oh, I go to the Morristown, Australia ecclesia. And they'd be like, oh, great. How's that one doing? How's Aunt Petunia? You'd be like, oh, she's
my
great.
family again.
No one would even know. It's so far away, it might work. So 2 years out, how has it felt? It's so recent still for you, honestly.
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend that it's just like so easy and this weight has been lifted off me. Certainly, it is a lot easier, and it's so good to be able to live life on my terms and get an extra day minimum in the week.
Yeah,
it's still tricky, and obviously with big family, like it's kind of this big 180 where there was all this pressure and like negative attention based on someone that I was with to now like these people that are like, oh, how you going? Miss you. And I know that, there is obviously an ulterior motive attached to it, but it's like very validating to feel like the way that I was feeling when I was younger about it not being real, and it just didn't sit right with me. Something I've thought about in the last few months, actually recently, is that's something that I kind of thought when I was like between the ages of 13 and I guess 18, like I didn't really sort of believe in it at all. It was something that I was just going along with. But I kept thinking, like, there's going to be no way for me to get out of this. I'm not ever going to be able to escape with this. I'm just always going to be stuck in this cycle. Like, I remember, like, because obviously when you have, like, a family that's so entrenched in it too, you can't really just be like, oh, hey, I don't actually really vibe with this thing your whole life's based around.
That's the thing we all grapple with.
When I was coming towards the end of high school, I actually did tell my parents. I came clean to them and was like, this isn't really what I believe in, and I'm not sure I want to be a part of this. And I remember I had like a bag packed and I was like expecting them to explode, and they weren't angry. They were just, I get angrily upset, but they kind of sort of just glossed over and they're like, no, you still have to go and do all this stuff. But, yeah, I had packed what I'd needed and I was like, okay, I'm ready to sort of figure out a way to get away from here. This could be it. But then sort of, I guess, that it did have that kind of, I'm never going to get out of this thing. So, yeah, I guess I've made my younger self proud in that I made it out and that I don't have to live life on someone else's terms, and that I've broken free, living in a life where you're being approved and checked by everybody else, I don't have to log into Zoom and put my computer in another room anymore.
Yeah, you're not under the microscope anymore of having them always policing you. I
Yeah.
feel like I want to steal that Christadelphian Police line now because that's kind of what it sounds like. Was they were always like watching you, monitoring you,
Yeah.
keeping tabs, and yeah, they would bust you too if they had to.
Yeah. It is kind of nice to sort of see my old meeting now from the outside and what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And still in some group chats related to it. Like I said, they're all really nice people. So
Mm-hmm.
if, to be honest, if they had some kind of significant event and invited me to it and I was free, I probably would consider going and saying hi to everybody again. But it's nice to be, in control of my own life.
And I think having your own escape route now, where if you needed to, you could, take a bike or a car away. I think having that autonomy to choose how long you're going to be there, who you're going to be with, all of that is an important factor too.
Yeah, I think anyone that you'll talk to, or most of the people that are listening to this, probably can all relate to that. It was like a non-negotiable. It's not like I don't feel like going this week, or to do what I did and say, hey, I don't really believe in this anymore. Like,
Yeah.
also, so I take back the last bit. I have heard some people whose parents did listen to them when they say that, but like
It seems
as
like it's the minority, I would say, though.
yeah, definitely as kids, I have heard some older people that eventually they told their parents they weren't allowed to leave anymore. But I say this to some people now that like they probably can't relate, but the freedom that I have now that I've gotten out of what I did is like second to none. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to put a price on it, really,
Yeah.
or to it's not like I was trapped there. And looking back, it's like, well, I could have left a lot earlier or done so many things differently. But like the what I was raised in, where it was just my family. It's like you can't get out of that. That's this bubble, and
Yeah.
obviously it's it's a big extreme thing. And even though it's not forced, there are all these little pressures where people like try to keep each other like in check from a young age.
Mm-hmm.
Even as young people, it's quite scary. So living life on my terms now is couldn't be more thankful, really.
Congrats on that. So do you regret leaving at all?
I don't. I do feel a bit sad to be away from the people in my
Well, you were
the church.
fortunate to have some good supportive people at that
Yeah,
time.
yeah, and I wish nothing but the best for them. They are very nice, loving, caring people, and it's nice to be able to see them from the outside. I know that people did like me there, and that I was a part of that community, and that I helped out. And so I was quite regretful to stop going there. So not regretful. It was sad to not.
You're like, what did I do? No, I get it's hard when the acceptance with the group comes with conditions. So as much as you may enjoy the people, it's not worth it for you to meet the conditions.
Yeah,
So that's where
and
you kind of get stuck.
it's also hard as well, I guess, saying this isn't for me anymore, and like I am quite estranged from my extended family now. So it is difficult in that end, and it's a very hard tightrope to walk. Where I always am going to love my family, regardless of any bad things that have
Mm-hmm.
happened or any extreme beliefs that we have that are different.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to pick peace at the end of the day, and I guess that's something that was just normalized in Christadelphia, bending over and twisting
Mm-hmm.
yourself into a pretzel to make it
Mm-hmm.
easier for other people, and
The people
that's not a healthy
pleasing.
or safe way to live life. So I
No.
don't regret it, and I'm happy I got out and
Yeah. I
get to live my own life now.
I think it is interesting. I think it's a little bit more raw for you and emotional since you're coming out of it so much more recently. I think for a lot of us, like me, I've been out for about a decade now. And so I've had so much time to process it and I've had so much time to rebuild the community that I've lost that I've had so much more supportive relationships since I've left than I personally ever had when I was there. So for me, it's just been really wonderful to have that, and that's helped so much. But I think right now you're still in that rebuilding stage and still figuring a lot of stuff out and still grieving and still, angry about certain things or sad about certain things where there's so much emotion around it as you're still processing it, figuring it out, and not knowing what the future holds because you're still creating it for yourself, which
Yeah,
is great that you have that potential to do whatever you want and watch as it unfolds. But I know for me, it was fucking hard to be quite honest. Like I, moved away and then I was estranged from my family and I was going through all of that stuff too. and felt very alone. So I just remember there's a lot of pain in the early stages of leaving. So it's not easy. And I think that's part of why, this interview is going to be a little bit different than some of the others where you're like, oh, yeah, I've been married for like 2 decades to a non believer. That's very different than someone who's like, I just got away and like got
Yeah.
my own apartment and I'm figuring it out. And I still like am in touch with people. It's very different and everyone handles things differently and everyone had a completely different experience too. I'm glad that
Yeah.
you had more positive relationships than I did, but you also grew up in such a different environment than I did where it was so tightly controlled and insular.
Yeah. I
So
definitely feel quite grateful. And I remember first coming into the ex-Christadelphian group that a lot of people were very shocked that someone so young was able to leave. And I know a lot of younger people are leaving, and I connect with quite a lot of people, I guess, outside of the group, and it's interesting to hear why people left or what caused people to go. And we all have our point, I guess, where enough is enough, and it still kind of does feel like, in a way, I'm still part of the leaving experience. Like, only very recently have I kind of felt quite comfortable telling people that, oh, I don't believe this. Like, I
yeah,
used
it's
to just be,
hard. The mental hold the beliefs have on you.
I used to be just like vague about it or like try and avoid it, like with time, the whole not needing Christadelphian approval, it starts to, go away. You realize that, oh, hey, I'm not part of this group anymore. Like, why do I need to be seen as right or doing what they say? Like,
The
so
expectations still unconsciously. There's so much that like you pay attention, you're like, oh wow, I didn't realize I was still thinking that way or doing that thing. Like it takes a long time to break the habits and change the mindsets, but a lot of it's just time.
yeah, so that's exciting too, to think about where I'll be 5-10 years and how I'll reflect. And yes, I guess it'll be a lot more retrospective, whereas I'm thinking about it very freshly.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And what brought you to the ex-Christadelphian group? Do you remember anything in particular?
I can't even remember.
Just found it
What
randomly?
what I think it was is, like I said, it's part of this like gradual shifting away. Is like my partner at the time. One of the biggest things, obviously, coming to a church and then women being treated so much differently. So she did a lot of research into it, and she kind of stumbled across this Facebook group for Christadelphian women who were striving for more like equal, egalitarian sort of
Yeah, I think I've
role
heard
to
of
play in it.
those. Yeah.
And I still actually am a part of it. I don't really participate as much as I did when I was in it, but it's still interesting to see. But
Be real.
So she found that, and we were part of that. And then when I left, she was able to help me, but she had no background religiously at all, or she knew it was so big.
Yeah,
And then
there's
when
so
she found
much
that,
in there.
she did some digging around on Facebook and found that, and I think she joined. So she stole some valor from the Christadelphians, not even actually ever being one and joining the group.
I know someone else that did that to support their spouse. So I have
Nah,
heard of some
it was
supportive partners doing it,
yeah,
going in
it's a
there.
good thing. No
Yeah,
valor was
it's
stolen at all.
nice.
But she's like, oh, you should join this, and so I joined her, and it's very funny. I have invited some people that I know that aren't super big on Facebook. They're like a bit overwhelmed by it, but seeing people that I'm like, whoa, these people like me it's so nice, and people are so supportive, and
Yeah.
especially over the last few years, like all the things that have been happening in the world, it's been a good place to kind of, I guess, get a sense of reality. And I remember being in therapy and talking about Christadelphians, and like we would spend like an hour explaining all of these in-depth things, and
Like the
they would just
culture and the knowledge and the doctrine and stuff. Yeah. It's time
and like
consuming.
I remember I would like talk about things that would happen, and then therapists would just be like,
Like I don't
that's
even know what to say to that.
that's a lot after like 2 minutes. I'm like, man, you meant to therapize me. So
Fix me.
that is one of the rules about the group, that it's not a replacement for therapy, but it is very cathartic and therapeutic to be able to connect and relate with people, because
Well, you all speak the same language. Like, I can say all these random things on this podcast that I think an outsider listening in is like, what on earth are they talking about? But with us, it's just seamless because we all speak like the same, like, Christadelphian speak with those terms and ideas.
Say we don't have to give all of the background to use for us to be on the same page.
And I was just going to add in that's why there's the welcome episode where I literally put in like a glossary of terms, because I was like, if you are not a Christadelphian and you want to listen to this, just listen to this episode and I'll try to catch you up to speed so you at least aren't totally lost.
It's almost kind of sad in a way that people that aren't super versed with Christadelphian culture, like, these would be a little bit confusing for them. Like, you kind of have to have experienced Christadelphian culture to get everything out of it.
But I have heard of a lot of Christadelphians finding other groups that they've listened to, like podcasts from like Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons and other resources and blogs and stuff from them. Pretty relatable. It's just, obviously a number of things are different just with Christadelphian culture and experiences, but it seems like a lot of the themes of being in kind of a tight, small religion where everyone kind of knows each other and it's kind of a minority group generally in people's communities. It seems like there's a lot of overlap in experiences, but it is nice having a place of our own where people can connect, especially given that everyone's so widely distributed around the world.
Yeah, it's really nice, and to be able to relate, like going from a community where we all speak the same language and we all just innately trust each other. Maybe it's the inverse where it's like, oh, you used to be here? Oh, cool, I can vouch for you.
Yeah, it's interesting though.
It's very nice.
Anything else you wanted to share, like resources or anything that come to mind? I mean, it sounds like you already mentioned Rob Hyman's book was pretty helpful for you as one thing.
Yeah, I definitely would recommend reading that. Yeah, I think it's important for people that have left to find some kind of connection where you can sort of, I guess, let out the bad mutually. Because I talk to people that aren't religious, and a lot of them don't even believe me about the kind of stuff that we did, and like I tell them about the days that like what life was like, and they're like they would a few months later like, hey, what do you tell me? Is that actually true? I'm like, yeah, and they're like,
what?
Oh, I thought you were just joking. I'm like, why would I joke about this?
Well, probably just because you're so different than what they would have expected based on the stories and stuff.
So yeah, I think it's important for, I guess, people that have left or leaving or thinking about leaving to find connection, and finding a therapist as well to be able to talk it out with is very important. It is really hard. I've seen so many throughout the years, and it is a little bit disheartening when you have to go to someone new and explain it all, and then like sometimes it takes like session 2 or 3 just explaining all this stuff. But finding healthy release for all of it, I'd say is, I guess, my advice for people that are leaving or have left. The Facebook group is is a very good place to start, and I've seen so much different stuff talked about in there, and the really, really loveliest thing is whenever someone says something that they're dealing with or talks about their experience, there's always just 10 plus comments of people like offering support and the condolences and stuff. And I remember like when I first posted in there and was talking about difficulties, like I was just overwhelmed by the amount of people that reached out to me, and like I couldn't even keep up with being able to like message people and get their advice and support.
I remember that. People are there. Good. There's good people. All those good people. There's still a ton of those good people who have also left. Not all the good people stay. A lot of people left, and so you still have those good ex-Christadelphians.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that's been your experience. I've had a similar experience. I think overall the group has been very, very positive. Most people are really lovely there. I'm glad you're doing good and you finally got your freedom, and that you're willing to come on the podcast and share your story as someone who has more recently left. It definitely offers another different perspective here, and definitely a really interesting situation with your background too in Christadelphia.
So. Nice to be able to connect and to I've said dribs and drabs of this kind of stuff in different places. Also, I tried to sort of not go into super specifics with this.
Yeah, but that's what we recommend.
It was nice to be able to put it out there and just say my truth.
Yeah, it's your story, so focusing on you and all of that. I was about to say something and now I'm forgetting what I was going to say.
You were going to reveal you actually are part of the Christadelphian Police, and I'm in big trouble.
My badge. Under arrest. Now you are sentenced to 6 more years of sitting through exhortations before you can earn your place back at the platform. No.
Oh.
I'm too sleepy. I'm done. My brain shuts off.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
But thanks again for coming onto the podcast today and sharing your stories, sharing some laughs. And I wish you the best in continuing your healing journey with figuring out what's next for you and kind of leaving some of the issues that you've had with Christadelphians and the impact it's had on you in the past.
Yeah, thanks for that.
So thanks.
I just wanted to quickly say as well, like a lot of the research you do into history and stuff and all that kind of thing is really impressive. So to build this up and to do all the episodes you've done so far and to give people the ability to express what they have gone through.
Doggy.
It seems to be a recurring thing of pets interrupting these. Yeah, no, it's a credit to you that you've I guess taken your experiences that have been quite negative and used it to be positive for yourself and other people. So it's a credit to you, and keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate hearing that. It's definitely a lot of labor of love. Let me tell you. It's definitely taken a lot of time, but it's so much fun meeting all the people that I've met. And I, just wanted to learn about it and laugh about it with everybody. And yeah, make something beautiful out of a lot of the pain and I don't know, whatever else from a background. For whatever reason, this just feels right now. And I hope a lot of people get something out of this and it, causes more positive ripples throughout our community and our world. So thank you for being a part of it.
No problems.
All right. Thank you everyone for listening to the Life After Leaving podcast, and we'll see you next time. Thank you to everyone who has helped make this episode of the podcast possible. Today's episode was edited by me, Zinnia. I'd also like to thank Al Kroons for creating our intro music and the ex-Christadelphians that submitted audio for the intro music. If you'd like to join our community, you can find us at the group for ex-Christadelphians on Facebook. You can also follow our social media on Facebook and Instagram at Life After Leaving Podcast. If you'd like to come on the podcast, reach out to me at lifeafterleavingpodcast@gmail.com. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please consider leaving a rating and review or sharing this podcast with a friend. That's all for today. Thanks and see you next time.